Hi everyone, welcome to the Becoming Anchored podcast. My name is Laura Deneen. I will be your host for today's episode. I am super excited for this content. If you are new to the Becoming Anchored podcast, we really are all about helping you move towards peace with your body. And so that really does look like gentleness, tenderness, care, ease as you move through life. We all have a body. And so I'm here just to share some tips and wisdom with you all about moving towards more embodiment. If you're in the state of Tennessee, we would love to see you. And if not, we encourage you to reach out to someone local to you for therapeutic services. So today we're actually doing a special edition on the topic of body image during the holiday season. I'm really excited for this content because I think that this is something that comes up quite frequently within the therapeutic space. It's something historically that I know that I struggled with, and so I've got lots of great ideas and tips and resources to share with you all today. So the holidays can be a really sweet, wonderful time of celebration. They can also be a time of like significant grief and loss. And I think a lot of people say things like, oh, I just want the holidays to be over, because it's a reminder of the things that they have lost or a reminder of the things that they don't have. So wherever you are in that experience, I welcome you today, and I want to validate your experience over the holidays. And specifically in the realm of body image, holidays can be hard for a lot of different people. So today we're just going to walk through some different thoughts that I have that will hopefully guide you, support you, nourish you as you are moving through the holiday season this year. So my first recommendation is to really look at your boundary system during the holidays. So we have boundaries with other people. So those are what we call interpersonal boundaries. And then we have boundaries with ourselves, intrapersonal boundaries. For example, me brushing my teeth before I go to bed is an example of like an intrapersonal boundary, right? And so we can have all sorts of different boundaries. Just a quick recap. Boundaries are really meant to be healthy and flexible. That's the goal. But oftentimes what we can fall into, if we're in a place of fear or maybe we're in a season of burnout, we can get to a place of like rigid boundaries or porous boundaries, meaning that our boundaries maybe have holes in them, and we might need to kind of move more towards the center of the spectrum. So our boundaries can be fluid, they can change over time, they can evolve as we move through different seasons of life, and as our capacity shifts, our boundary system will need to shift as well. So particularly with body image, it's really, really important to do some self-inquiry. So essentially getting curious with your own self about what your boundary system looks like. Because oftentimes we are walking into environments where people may not have super helpful things to say to us about our bodies. They might even say hurtful things to us about our bodies, or perhaps other people's bodies or their own body. And that can be triggering for a lot of people. So my first encouragement to you is to think about your boundary system and to think about having a couple kind of quick things that you can go to when you are perhaps in an uncomfortable situation. So if someone starts talking about their own body in an unhelpful way, can you perhaps leave the conversation? That would be an example of kind of opting out. Or perhaps do you want to address that criticism and say something like, yeah, I'm really practicing tolerating my body or accepting my body. Body bashing behaviors, criticizing your body doesn't actually help. So there's all sorts of ways that we can respond if other people start criticizing their own bodies or perhaps your body. Figuring out what you want to say in response and having that ready to go ahead of time. So this is a skill in the therapeutic space that we call coping ahead. And coping ahead is a beautiful skill because it really allows us to plan around these experiences that might be somewhat uncomfortable in the moment. And boundaries go beyond our bodies or comments about our bodies or our loved ones' bodies we also get to decide what we say yes to, what we say no to. And the goal here is to be able to show up fully each time we say yes. And having boundaries allows us to do that. And for the record, like, we've done a couple episodes on diet culture comments around bodies at large, and this is so sad and it's really inappropriate, right? If you do overhear these types of comments, because in my opinion, people that comment on their own body or other people's bodies typically have their own body image concerns. And so what can happen is oftentimes this can become a point of connection in social gatherings, and I'm here to validate how uncomfortable that can be, especially as you're doing some of the deeper body image work, and to encourage you to set boundaries, to start a new conversation, to opt out of a harmful conversation, to use your voice in a way that feels authentic and assertive with the people that are in your environment. So that's point number one. Look at your boundary system. What might need to shift and evolve over the holidays? What do you want to say yes to? What do you want to say no to? Who is a safe person for you as you're navigating doing some of this deeper body image work? Who can you confide in and be vulnerable with if somebody has crossed your boundaries? So those are all of my tips on the topic of boundaries. I encourage you to cope ahead, to really have a couple things in your back pocket that might help you. Okay, point number two. I encourage you to think about having adequate and consistent nutrition, right? So especially in the holidays, there are so many different like fun gatherings that might be at various times throughout the day, and perhaps that might be triggering for you or might cause more body image distress. So for example, like say you have like a potluck at work, or like somebody brings in a cake at 3 p.m., I still want to encourage you to eat breakfast, lunch, and a snack in between breakfast and lunch, because this is going to allow you to fully be present for that afternoon cake, right? And so what we see happen a lot of times, especially around the holidays, is there's so many wonderful foods available, maybe foods that we normally wouldn't have, or maybe people are baking more and they're bringing things to work, or maybe you're going over to a friend's house and they have baked goods available. I still want to encourage you to have that foundation of having adequate nutrition, consistent nutrition, and a variety of foods. This is going to support negative body image symptomology. I cannot tell you the number of clients that I have worked with where we start off and they really want to work on their body image, which is amazing. However, a lot of times they are not fueling their bodies enough, they are not eating enough. And so what we see oftentimes within the therapeutic space is that as we nourish ourselves more, distressing thoughts around food and one's body actually go down. And so one of the best ways that you can even set the boundary that we just talked about and be present with loved ones and have a good time is by ensuring that you are eating enough and food in a consistent way. So if gatherings are hard for you, and if maybe having flexibility is hard for you, talk to a professional dietitian about that experience and get support from people who really get it, who can support you in meeting your needs in a consistent way. So flexibility with food and body are really important. And if this season tends to be harder for you because there's more food availability, maybe there's a change in routine, I want to encourage you to validate that for yourself and also consider what is a recovery-oriented behavior around my body. So how can I take care of my body even on days when my schedule might not be the same as it always is, even when there's more food available that might be hard for me? How do I still care for my body on those days, knowing that nutrition is the foundation to really us living these amazing, beautiful lives? So nutrition's great, food is great, and I encourage you to really notice these experiences with food. So are there things that bring you joy, or maybe that you haven't allowed yourself to have, that you want to give yourself permission to eat? So for example, my husband and I love peppermint bark during the holiday season. And so there's a great local store that has it, and They sell it in these tubs, and we'll definitely get a handful of tubs over the holiday season. We'll watch a show and eat our peppermint bark. And it's not only about the peppermint bark, right? It's about that connection together. And so food is connecting, and it can be. And so if you have shame around food, I encourage you to explore what that shame would be and to consider unlearning some of those shameful things, recognizing that our bodies need that nutrition on a consistent basis. Okay, point number 3 that I want to talk about is perfectionism around the holiday season. Okay, so first we talked about boundaries, then we talked about the importance of adequate nutrition, and now I want to talk about perfectionism, especially as it relates to body image. So if you are someone that maybe has struggled in your relationship with body, perhaps you identify as a perfectionist. I call myself like a recovering perfectionist, right? It's something that I just have to be mindful of, that I'm really just continuing to notice and address within my own life. And a lot of times I think if you struggle with body image, perfectionism can also kind of go through an increase during the holiday season. So remember that perfectionism is essentially an unattainable goal that we have for ourselves and for other people. So especially during the holiday season, as we're like going to celebrations, or perhaps we're traveling to see family or loved ones, there can almost be this like unspoken pressure to quote unquote look our best, right? And I have that in air quotations if you're listening, but really during the holiday season, there is, I think, more pressure that is almost unspoken, it's implied, and sometimes it is more explicit. But I just want you to notice if that has been the case for you. So perfection is unattainable, right? Because there is no such thing as a perfect human being or a perfect body. So we have to first and foremost lay that foundation that the pursuit of perfection doesn't actually work, because it causes a lot of times the individual's distress, and a lot of times it can actually be impairing in terms of our interpersonal relationships, or our relationships with our loved ones or colleagues as well. So first we have to lay the foundation that perfection doesn't actually exist. And then I would encourage you to validate perhaps if you have tried to pursue perfection during the holiday season. Maybe you really have tried historically to look your best at various work parties or family gatherings, or maybe you put a lot of pressure on yourself or your body to look a certain way for that Christmas card picture. So no matter what your experience is, first and foremost, I want to encourage you to have compassion for yourself. So naming this pressure is really important. And then I want you to take a step back and look at what you are actually trying to achieve. So oftentimes there are kind of what we would call just these ulterior kind of gains from pursuing perfectionism, right? So maybe if I'm perfect, or if someone really thinks that I look good, whatever that means for you, then I'm more likely to be accepted or to belong. So looking at this deeper layer of what you are hoping to gain by pursuing perfection. And so having that awareness is really, really key towards taking a step back and in moving towards more authenticity over perfection. And then I want you to consider asking yourself like what you want to remember about this holiday season. So if you are kind of tired and fed up with going through the holidays by putting a lot of pressure on yourself, by trying to look a certain way, maybe you've engaged in what we would call maladaptive behaviors to try to change your body or look a certain way, I'm here to tell you that there is another way. And so I want you to get curious, like come January 1st or maybe February 1st, as you reflect back on the holiday season, what do you want to remember about the holiday season? My little girl is about to turn 3, and I think this year will be really the first year that she fully understands like presents and Santa Claus and mommy and daddy getting her presents. And like my goal is to really just be fully present with her as she is opening her gifts, as we are eating candy canes together, as we're drinking hot chocolate together. She really loves whipped cream, like loves whipped cream. And so I really just want to notice the joy that she experiences as we make hot chocolate together. And you know what, if that day my hair is up in a ponytail and I've got some extra dry shampoo, so be it, right? Because what's more important to me than how I look is spending time with her and being present with her in that moment. And so asking ourselves that question of like, what do I want to remember about the holiday season? What is most in line with my values this holiday season? And a lot of people will not say like, yeah, Laura, I want to remember exactly what I wore and how I looked, right? And so I just want to encourage you to self-reflect as we're talking about perfectionism, specifically in the context of body image, to really reevaluate, maybe perhaps pivoting, doing something a little bit different this year if what you've done historically has not worked for you. Because the reality is our lives are so short, and if you've struggled with body image, I can imagine that you're tired of the struggle, and I can imagine that you really have wanted relief and you've wanted to do it a different way. And so what better time than to start practicing some of these skills than now? And the holidays can be a lot to hold. And so another great question for you to ask yourself is, how do I want to feel in my body, right? Do I want to prioritize sleep? Do I want to prioritize nutrition? Do I want to have more boundaries this holiday season? Do I really want to maybe a little bit more time and energy for self-care this holiday season? Because all of this is embodiment, right? And the goal here is for us to be able to pay attention to what our bodies are communicating to us throughout the holiday season, versus looking up, January 1st and thinking that the holidays were a blur, right? Because our bodies are always communicating to us, and it's important for us to pay attention. So the 3 things that we talked about today: boundaries with family of origin and friends and loved ones and colleagues throughout the holiday season. We talked about having appropriate, consistent nutrition throughout the holiday season. And then we also talked about perhaps addressing some of this perfectionism that you might be holding on to and considering a different way. So our bodies are always with us, and how we treat them matters. And if you've struggled with body image, these small changes do have a big impact over time. And so my hope for you is that this holiday season can be different, even if that's just a 1 degree shift. So be patient with yourself. This work is slow and steady, and these small changes do add up over time. So I'm so glad to have had you here for today's episode. Happy holidays for whatever you might be celebrating. Some homework for you today. I gave some, but just that self-reflection around those 3 pieces. So the boundaries, the nutrition piece, and addressing some of the perfectionism that might be present in your life. And my affirmation that I would love to provide you all with is just this idea that you are deserving of ease and accessing ease throughout the holiday season, and all that entails. So happy holidays. I'll see you next time. Take good care.